What I should say is, welcome back.
Thank you. Honored to be here again on another date with you.
Is this a date?
It's certainly not a date. You can't date people through computers.
We're going to talk about dating.
What we're going to be discussing is tips from my book of Fatal Dating Tips. These are practical tips that I've written truly from the bottom of my heart to help find real connection in a world that sometimes feels unreal.
A perfect crime, it resonates a little like Nietzsche's famous phrase proclaiming the death of God. But the symbolic murder of God in the 19th century was going to change the destiny of things. In the perfect crime, it's no longer a question of God, but of reality. And it's no more a symbolic murder, but an extermination.
These are practical tips that I've written truly from the bottom of my heart to help find real connection in a world that sometimes feels unreal, especially in our personal connections.
The first tip, do we want to just start with the first one, number one?
Sure. Are you going to have some big graphic that's going to come in and say it? I hope so. I hope we're going to have high production values on this new show.
Yeah, I will. Okay, the tip number one.
Tip number one, start worse.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means that perhaps start worse than you really are. I think sometimes when we enter into any sort of new relationship, or in fact, any sort of interaction in the world, obviously what we want to do is present ourselves as best we can. And there's often a temptation to present ourselves as even better than we are. And what I think is that when you do that in any field, in any relationship, but particularly in close personal ones, when you present yourself as something better than you are right from the start, that's going to lead you into a lot of problems, Doug. That's what I think. It's human and natural. But I also think that these days, there's so much ways that we can make ourselves seem better than we are that weren't available to us in the past. Digital media, filters, AI. You don't need Cyrano de Bergerac whispering sweet nothings in your ear to woo ladies. You've got Chat GPT. There's so many different ways that we can present small gobbets of ourselves to make ourselves look even better than we actually are. And then when we meet in real life, it can be a disappointment. And worse, it can be much more than a disappointment.
To make this concrete, would you be telling a man or woman who might be trying to set up a dating profile on Tinder that it would be a mistake to have a professional photographer take their picture and to try to get the most attractive photo to put onto their dating app?
I would. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think that if you are looking you'd be very lucky indeed to find a really good relationship from Tinder. That's just my opinion. Call me an old lady if you want to, but I have to say, I don't think those things work. I think that whenever we present any form of bio of ourselves, a non-live version of ourselves, what we're doing is making something false. And it's not just bad for the person that we're interacting with, it's bad for ourselves, because when you write your dating bio, you are writing a prison for yourself. You're writing something that you feel later someone might say, well, but that's not who you are. That's not how you presented yourself. So you're already imprisoning yourself in a sequence of facts about yourself that just aren't true at all. But if your only means is going on Tinder, then yeah, I would say the professional photo, all of that stuff, you really don't want to go that way. I'd say an ugly photo of yourself and some really basic and not particularly nice things about yourself. In my opinion, that's a much better way to go. Then you could be pleasantly surprised. Then you're weeding people out, aren't you? If people can't take your worst bad self, then they can't take you, can they?
While the photo, according to Roland Barthes, testifies of an absence, but something really took place but now went away forever. Today the photo, a genuine analogous photograph, would rather testify of a presence, of an immediate presence of a subject to the object. What does not happen anymore in the computerizing of images.
ultimate challenge to a synthetic order which is now overwhelmed us. The relation of the image to its reference raised already a lot of problems, both of representation, but when the referent is out of the field, and there is actually no representation anymore, when the real object has disappeared into the technical programming of the image, when the image as pure artifact does not reflect anyone or anything, and does not even go through the phase of the negative, can we still speak of an image? And in fact, televisual, numerical and virtual images are the images at all. Our real world of images will soon cease to exist, and our consumption of images itself will be virtual. If the image, as Plato says, is the confluence of the light emanating from the object and of the light emanating from the eye, then we will soon neither have an object nor an eye, and there's no images anymore. The same problem is for thinking. In the field of artificial intelligence, the thought does not even have time to formulate itself. Maybe the computerization of the image is the perfect mode of the image, and just the same, the computerization of thought, artificial intelligence, would be the achievement of thinking. But just because of this, it is at the same time the total denigration. In the very perfection lies the violence of synthetic images and artificial intelligence.
Well, let me give an anecdote and see if you think to see what you think about this. I dated a woman for a while, who I met on Hinge, not Tinder.
On Hinge or Unhinge?
On Hinge, not she wasn't unhinged. You'll be the judge of whether or not she was.
I'm not questioning whether she was unhinged.
Well, obviously she was. If she was dating me.
I'm not questioning if she was unhinged.
On my dating profile, I had a photo that I had taken of myself holding my cat, Serenity, and my cat had nuzzled its head up against my chin, and I was cuddling the cat, and I put that up on my dating profile, and this woman had.
Do you still have the photo? Are you going to be able to
yeah, I'll see if
interleave?
I'll put a picture of it in. Yeah, the woman that I was dating, we gone on, I don't know, countless dates. We were we were having a beer at this pub, and I said I thought the people who liked their animals more than people were misguided, and that I didn't like animals more than people, but liked people more, and thought the obsession with pets was unhealthy. And she said, "You're a liar." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You put that photograph of yourself. You don't even like cats. And you put that photograph of yourself holding your cat like that." And I said, "Well, I have a cat. That's my cat. That was my cat snuggling on my lap." And she said, "Yeah, but you didn't care about it." So I said, "Well, I thought it would make me more attractive to put that on the app." And so do you think I was lying to her with that photo at the start?
I think that you were lying to her, but I also think that she had formed an impression of you that everything in your real life interaction, I would say. I mean, I don't know this woman, I don't know the situation, but in hearing this, my reading of this would be, she saw your photo, and the photo of you with the cat was you. That was it. That was the thing that she had responded to. And images are so incredibly powerful, aren't they? She'd seen that, and from that, she had constructed a fantasy. She had seen, apologies, lady, if you're watching, and I'm sure this is not exactly as it was. This is my version of this interaction, but she saw that, and it sparked something. It sparked a reverie, and that's what's interesting and also dangerous about romance, and why in the end we might prefer things like dating sites or a more factual way of approaching human relationships, because we might want to excise anything that's to do with fantasy, because fantasy is dangerous, because it's always a lie and it's always something personal. She saw your photo, she saw you with the cat, and a whole construction came into play, which it wouldn't have done in the same way if she'd met you in a bar without your cat and seen something else. But from that, she was like, he's a lovely guy, he's got a cat. When he and I get married, I'll also have a cat. Maybe we'll have a couple. That cat, I'll also start stroking that cat. A whole story had been created, and it would be interesting to know what was her photo that you saw, and to know. But now we're getting much too personal, and you probably don't want to do this. But when you saw her photo, whatever was in that photo, the props of that photo also would have started a dream world inside you. All sorts of dreams might have happened in that dream world. And when you said that to her, you burst the balloon of a fantasy that she had, and then all of you dissipated, I would say. Did the relationship continue onto another date after that?
No, we didn't see each other after that date.
Okay.
That was that was the end of as I recall, that was the end of our relationship. But it wasn't like right away, right that minute, but it was like, we just didn't. Okay.
But that was obviously, there's nothing worse. In England, we say there's a show on here called Love Island that you may not have ever heard of or seen. Is there an American version of Love Island? I'm not sure. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say Love Island? Okay, so it's an influential program that has introduced a lot of vocabulary to us British people. One of them is getting the ick. Do you understand what that means?
No, what is getting the ick?
Getting the ick is you're seeing somebody, or you've begun a flirtation with somebody, they seem great, and then they do one thing, and that gives you the ick. And as soon as the ick has been given, it is, as I said, it's the balloon has been punctured. The fantasy that you've had of that person is gone. Suddenly you see them in a different way, and it's desperately unattractive. And as soon as, what they say on Love Island is, as soon as you have the ick, you can't go back from the ick. And I think that's true. I mean, without having seen Love Island, do you know that emotion? Have you got the ick? Is it possible to come back from the ick if you recognize what an ick is?
I think that men have a higher tolerance for the ick than women have. I think that women are the ones who probably are most likely to get the ick, whereas men are less likely to have that reaction that be consequential. Okay,
well, already we're getting into interesting and gendered territory, and it's certainly in my book of Fatal Dating Tips, I certainly discuss men, women, and what we mean by them, and we'll save that for another time because I've got some good tips about men and women. But I will say that in a way, what I've come to find in writing my tips is it's more useful to talk about, for many reasons, it's more useful to talk about people who do and people who like to be done.
I want to go back a step and just point something out about what you said a moment ago, which was, you said that the woman I was dating had formed a fantasy about me based on seeing the photo of me with my cat, and she might have fantasized about us getting meowied. Did you say meowied? Did you? Because she was really into cats.
I wish I had.
That's all I want to say. So that was appropriate if you had said that. Yeah. So the other thing that I guess we should go back to is, I want to ask you this. What is the source of this advice for you? Like, how did you come to decide that it's best to start worse? And isn't there a risk that you won't start at all if you start worse?
There's a risk that you won't start at all. You have to be really careful. I mean, it depends what you want. Depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for, but even if you are just looking for cheap shags, you still have to be very, very careful indeed about who you embark on such a journey with. You have to be really careful. And I think that all sorts of fantasies can come into us, and we can pretend a lot of stuff about people. And down the line, we can really wish that we hadn't. And I think that it is, so for me, the reason why I start my book of dating tips with Start Worse is because I have historically not started worse. I have historically been very glad to be in relationships, and I have historically been, not always, but I have historically started better. I have presented a version of myself that is a more forgiving version of myself. And furthermore, I've also accepted other people without calling them on stuff. Part of starting worse also means being very live to what people are up to, what the red flags are. If someone says something, if it feels wrong and jars, I have from time to time ignored those voices in my head. And what I really want to say to many people, especially to young people starting off on this adventure, is don't do that. Don't do that. Start worse, present yourself worse, and also be very stern and strict indeed when you hear what the other person is saying, if it isn't something that chimes with you. It's so much easier from the gate to recognize and say to yourself, this isn't right, doesn't work, I'll leave it. It's no fault of mine, it's no fault of the other person. It's not right for us. Rather than saying, oh, that sounded bad, but I'm going to pretend that that's not how I've taken that. And instead, I'm going to just merrily continue on until things become serious. So it's probably very useful that you had that disagreement with the cat lady, because it's, imagine it had been 6 months with the cat lady, it would have been a lot easier, a lot harder not to see each other after that. But I want to go back to you said to me, men get the ick less than women do. But I don't think that's true, Doug. What I think is I think that men, and I don't necessarily think it's because men intrinsically are like this, but I think that a whole Western culture that's produced Western man has sometimes ended up with Western man thinking that what Western man wants is just the shags. And therefore, what you will do is sometimes, not always, be actually quite glad to get the ick, because then that will let you continue on with the shags, but not have to invest emotionally or give full respect to the person who's given you the ick for whatever reason. I mean, we're talking here about psychological icks, but we could also be talking about physical icks. We could. Are you saying to me that men, what we're calling men, that physical icks don't happen for men, that they'll just hold their nose and do it if for whatever's available? Is that true? That's what some women say about some men. Are you here to confirm that is how it is?
I take the Fifth Amendment.
Well, that sounds like yes.
I refuse to incriminate myself.
I will tell you.
In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on. In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on. In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on. In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on. In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on. In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on. In this process of prostitution, pornography, obscenity, and so on.
Let's be even more concrete about this. Like if I were to go out on a first date, should I not get dressed up? Should I not bother to shower? Should I not be pleasant, or should I just, whatever my first impulse is, the kind of thing that I might say to someone I was close to, should I say that to the woman who I'm meeting for the very first time? Is that the advice you're giving?
I think that meeting somebody because you're going to go on a date, which is what the internet has done to us, is not a good place to start with it. The ideal thing is to bump into someone in the normal course of your everyday life, right? Dating is, the word dating, when I was growing up in Britain, we learned that American people did this thing called dating. That wasn't how it was for us, but it's become that way for us. And internet dating sites have made it prevalent amongst a lot of the world, I would say. But I think it's an unnatural place. I think the place to meet somebody is in the normal course of your daily business. And in the normal course of your daily business, you're going about as you are, as you feel comfortable, right? You're wearing the clothes that make you feel comfortable. You're saying the things that make you feel comfortable. You're in the places that make you feel comfortable or not. And if you're in a place that makes you feel uncomfortable and you've met somebody, if you formed a connection with them, it's because you both feel uncomfortable in that place. And that's a good place to begin. Whereas the very artificial place of a dating site is, there you have to put on theatre, right? You have to put on theatre. But I think if you are going to go down the route of finding somebody on an internet dating site, you should be aware that it's an unromantic place And it is, you know, you're looking really for old style matchmaking. You're looking for something that's a lot more prosaic than what you might say that you're looking for in your dating profile. I would say turn up as yourself in your normal gear without wearing too much foundation. That would be my advice.
Well, it seems to me that dating is like a holdover of courtship. Isn't it? Like, you know, you're if a man is interested in a woman, he courts her, maybe he has to go and meet her parents, maybe goes on a few outings with her whole family there. Okay. There's a negotiation between the families. That's dating is like an updated version of that. Is that right?
We're talking about two sorts of things. We're talking about arranged marriages versus a really hot connection with somebody. And those things are not the same. And I think that a confusion that we have these days, that in the past, perhaps I think it was a lot clearer. Your community, more or less, would decide with you, sometimes for you, sometimes with your involvement, sometimes not. They would say, this is the person that you should marry. And you would generally marry that person, and you would know that it was not a romantic relationship. You would know that it was very pragmatic. They came from your village. Their father was a king and your father was a king, however it was. And you would know, I'm not here to have my life solved. I'm here because this is how society functions. And perhaps I'll have sex with this person. I'll have kids with this person. Perhaps something more connected will develop between us. Perhaps it won't. Perhaps I'll just understand that I don't get on with this person, but society's put us together. We nevertheless have sex. We have kids. I'll look for my pleasures elsewhere. That's one thing. Another thing is something that more or less until very recently didn't exist in the form of marriage, which is like, you know, oh, I've just caught eyes with this stray villager who I haven't noticed before. We're going to go behind the bike sheds. Nobody's going to know about this. We're going to have a true passionate connection. It probably won't last for a long time. If people found out about it, we might be in mortal danger. If I do this, it's very risky. Those are two separate things. And it seems to me that a confusion and a big problem for us in this day is that we've conflated these two things. And, you know, the big example of that would be Valentine's Day. I think it would be much more helpful to us to know that, okay, I'm lonely. I don't like living in my house by myself with just my cat. I'd like to have someone to have sex with on the regular. I'm going to go to this dating site. I'm going to find somebody. It's going to be more like arranged marriages were in the past, apart from it's the algorithm who's doing the arranging rather than the old lady dressed in black or my parents or whoever. And what's the result of this is going to be, hopefully, not some dreadful marriage to or relationship with some brute who I don't get on with, or someone who's really dull and boring, but something manageable just for the sake of society. And therefore, I'm not going to vest it with all this ridiculous. I'm not going to send Valentine's cards. I'm not going to go and do all that stuff because I know that it's just a pragmatic, practical thing. This other thing is something separate, and it's something that's more dangerous. And I think that computers give us a lot of ideas that we have security and control over things, including the idea that we can get rid of, to some degree, the fear, the danger, the heartbreak that can happen from the other sort of relationship. But in doing that, we also have to accept that we drain a lot of the thrills out of those relationships, because to some degree, really hot connection happens illicitly. And that may or may not mean because you're already involved with somebody else. But it will mean that because it happens ducked out of society, which is increasingly hard to do, but we'll talk about that in another tip. So I think what I'm trying to say is we are in grave danger of conflating hot, true connection with somebody with what is present to us on a dating site. And it would be much healthier if we could say, I just want an arranged marriage, which is, in my view, what dating sites offer.
Well, I'm reminded of something I learned years ago. I don't know whether so here's how I remember learning it. I picked up a book at a yard sale. Do you have yard sales in the UK? Do you know what these things are? People,
yeah. I know. We don't call them yard sales, but we have them. And car boot sale. Right.
So you go. Anyway, there was a book. It was like the history of romance or something like that, and it pointed out that the perfect romantic love story in the Middle Ages and up until modern times even was the story of unrequited love between a maiden and a knight or a maiden and a gentleman who, for circumstantial reasons, could never be together, and who one of them would be married, or one of them would be in an arranged situation, so they were going to be married to someone else, but they would glance at each other, and maybe there would be some token of affection given, and that then the knight would romanticize and fantasize about the woman for the rest of his days, and a poem would be written or a story would be written. And it seems to me what you're talking about is something closer to that as to what romance is. Maybe it is consummated in your versions, so it can be hot in a modern sense, but it's nonetheless illicit, supplemental, and isn't aimed at creating an institution like marriage or a permanent.
Well, it's based on missed connection. If we're going to get Lacanian on what's going on, it's always based on this. It's never based on that. You can never, it's never. Sometimes it's consummated, sometimes it's not, but it is always dodgy. By dodgy, I mean it's always, you can never be sure of it. And furthermore, it isn't played out in the realm of Marxist dialectic materialism. It is played out in the realm of play, which is to say, you're never going for the direct meaning. You're never pinning someone down. What exactly do you mean? Or you're someone who doesn't like cats. It's done where you are so stepping back from society that you're even stepping back from being a Marxist materialist, from doing the let me forensically examine you and see exactly what sort of person you are or say you are. Do you hold yourself to it? It's saying all that's for shit. We just play. I'll say this and you won't answer my question. You'll pose another question and then I'll pose another question and then I'll pose another question up to and into the nth of perhaps even having sex with somebody and perhaps not having sex with somebody. But something that is interesting that my reading of Baudrillard has shown me is that we have such a desire to produce all the time that we also want to produce satisfying romance, if you see what I mean. And it should look like this. It should be healthy. Sex is functional, basically. And everything is pegged on finding someone that you really connect with and that you have good sex with. And let's see if our sex life's good enough. If not, we'll go and have it forensically examined by a sex therapist who'll tell us how to do our sex better, which is completely, again, in the realm of arranged marriage, as opposed to the realm of actual connection with somebody, which doesn't have to end up in being about sex in the end. It really doesn't. It can just about being the thrill of, I'd say some of the best relationships that I've had have just been about the look that you have given somebody over a long period of time where your eyes meet, nothing further happens from it. That can be much more satisfying and romantic than anything that ends up, saying, well, you do this and I like it when you do this to me and blah, 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 blah.
I want to show you this picture. This is what's in the background behind it. And this is what I got from Canva when I typed in the word dating. I think it was the words dating and romance. And
Wow.
I don't know if the people in the background there are on a date or if they're a couple. One of them seems to have an umbrella. But
they're not even holding hands. And when you showed it to me first, I thought there was a third person there wearing a strange hat, but it's a kind of windmill. What is it? There's something else there.
Something in the background that's reflected in the water. Yeah. Yeah. And
something. Yeah. It looks dangerous, Doug. It looks like you might get mugged there.
Yeah, but look at the tree that's in the foreground. That's in focus. That's a heart with the initials K and M in it. And I don't know, Kim and Mike maybe, or Crystal and Mohammed.
Kenneth and Mary.
Kenneth and Mary.
And does that really speak to you? You like this heart carved into the tree. Why do you like it so much?
Oh, I didn't say that I liked it, but I'll allow you to impose that upon me. Sure, I have a romantic side. I these sort of sentimental cliches, carving your teenagers in love, carving their initials into a tree on a date.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? It's because it's like getting a tattoo, except it's a bit easier, because it's saying in the world of impermanence, this connection I have with you is permanent. and it will grow with the tree. It's there forever. Everyone will always be able to see it. I love you forever. But maybe that's not a sensible thing to think. Sensible is not the right word. Maybe that's not an actual romantic thing to think, because maybe what that is in the end is a kind of forcing, even a blackmail that says, you're tied to this. I wrote your initials on the tree. I carved your name into my arm. That is the extreme love that I have for you. If you betray that kind of love, then you're a bastard. And surely, as grown-up human beings, what we know is that all these things can always change. That to say, I love you forever, I am yours forever, you must be mine forever, it doesn't always work like that. I would say it's a lot more romantic never to carve anything onto a tree, we can forgive teenagers, but when you're not a teenager anymore and when you've had a bit of experience, I would say it's so much more romantic not to get the tattoo that later you're going to have lasered off. To say to somebody, it's probably not going to work out between us, is it? It's probably not going to work out between us. Why don't we just do this for a bit until it stops working out for us? Instead of trying to become the police, basically. You said this. You carved my name on the tree. Now you're saying this. Yeah. Which is what's going to happen to all of it, right?
I know you don't like Freud, but I'm going to follow up that exchange with this remark. My favorite Police song, or actually probably my least favorite song by the Police, is called Mother.
Your favorite, but your least favorite. Okay, carry on.
And it's called Mother, and it has like a well, maybe I'll play a short clip of it, but it's on their album Synchronicity. It's got a repetitious droning quality to it, and the lyrics are goes like this: every girl I go out with becomes my mother in the end. Every girl I go out with becomes my mother in the end. Oh, someone's calling. Is that my mother on the phone? Why can't she leave me alone? Things like that. So what do you make of it?
So is this your favorite or your least favorite?
It's my favorite, least favorite Police song. I'm not going to...
And why is that, Doug? Talking of Freud.
Why is it that it's my favorite and least favorite? Well, it's my second most favorite Oedipal song. My favorite Oedipal song is just the theme song from this movie Oedipus Rex, as written by Tom Lehrer.
There once lived a man named Oedipus Rex. You may have heard about his odd complex. His name appears in Freud's index because he loved his mother.
Do you think it's true that one of the dangers that men run into when they date women is that the women start to seem like their mother to them? Or that for women is that the men in their life, the man in their life is going to start to seem like their father to them? Are we reproducing bourgeois edible dramas as we go out into the world?
Well, if we're fools, yes, we are. If we're people who have not examined our life and really got down to the basics of throwing almost everything away, truly knowing that everything that we grow up and say about ourselves, probably until we're 30, is absolute complete rubbish and should be chucked away. Because I think that you grow up, you're a child, you know one form of love. It's the love that your parents give you. And I think for many people, you think that's what love is and what it's going to be like when you form your own connections and relationships with other people. But it's absolutely not. It's to be trapped as a baby, to think that, oh, I'm with somebody, now they're going to start cooking my meals and, wiping my bottom, basically. It just means you haven't evolved and seen what it is, which is to have a deep look into the eyes of a stranger or co-worker or whoever, someone at a dating site, where you're both, more than anything, able to say, yes, I understand that that's not what this is going to be, because I'm a grown-up person. And a definition of being a grown-up person is to say, I understand that's not what human relationships are. That is what a maternal-paternal relationship is. And what I think, to, go back to our terms of men and women, is I think women, sometimes it's easier for us to throw those things away because we know that we ourselves are going to have to, perhaps, not all women, obviously, but anyone who is a woman has known at some point it's technically possible for them to have kids. And therefore, one has had a thought dating back for many years, which is, I'm going to have to do that for somebody else in turn one day. And which means that you can step out of the prison of just being the recipient, you've had to, even if it never happens for you, you've had to think about what it might be like to have a different relationship. Whereas men don't have to do that because, men can spurt and run. Sorry, that's a disgusting phrase. And they may never have to have any responsibility for what they just did. And they may never, it's not going to grow inside their body, come out of their body, and therefore they're going to have a sort of connection that's going to require them to do perhaps a little bit of the other sort of love at some point. But all this is why I think Freud is quite limited, because that's just a very babyish way of looking what relationships are. But yet that's what we carry with us. And we think it's going to be all, it's about being with someone is about being lovely all the time. It's really not about that. I really don't think well, obviously it is about being lovely, but it's about being lovely in a different way, which is to say, I know all that loveliness stuff is crap. Phew, release. None of us really are lovely, warm people. Very few people are lovely, warm people. But even those people have some darkness there. And there's the value is in being honest first with yourself and then with somebody else about that darkness, or about the impermanence of whatever it is that's going on between you, and the lack of being able to pin it down scientifically, mathematically, so that blah, 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 if you see what I mean. So I think it's a big problem for us now, because we've conflated arranged marriages with romance, because that's what we've been taught. And it will be so much healthier for us to
disentangle them. How about that? I'll mansplain this to you.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks so much. But I think when we go into anything thinking that we're so lovely, we're on a hiding to nowhere. That's what I think.
Perfect crime, it resonates a little like Nietzsche's famous phrase proclaiming the deity of God. But the symbolic murder of God in the 19th century was going to change the destiny of things. In The Perfect Crime, it's no longer a question of God, but of reality. And it's no more a symbolic murder, but an extermination.